Hi, my name is Scarlett. I am an atheist and skeptic, and apparently a glutton for punishment. I just really have a fascination with these questions for atheists, and I think I found the second most tedious list of questions for atheists. The first was from Matt Slick and his website CARM. This one is also from Matt Slick. Yes, he has two sets of questions for atheists. Let's take a look. This set of questions was posted on December 14th, 2011. There is a set of questions in this survey for atheists. They are survey questions. Did I mention it was a survey? Survey. So apparently CARM did a survey back in 2011. I did link out, this still links out to some survey site, but it's not the actual survey. They want you to log in, which I don't want to do, so we're not going to do that. One thing that is not here is the results of that survey, which I would have liked to have seen. I mean, this was 2011. That's plenty of time to at least put together what you got so far, but it doesn't link here at all. Maybe it's somewhere on the website. All I'm saying is it would have been nice to put it right here on this webpage. Not just, hey, go fill out this survey, thanks, but here are the results. And I like the thanks does not have a period or an exclamation or anything. So one of my questions about the survey was, did they expect atheists to come here? Like, you know, I'm just this numbskull person on YouTube that likes questions for atheists, but do people come to CARM looking for these? I don't know. All right, enough blabbing on about the survey. Let's see the questions. Question 1, we're off to a good start. How would you define atheism? Yeah, that is an awesome question, and I just define it as a lack of belief. That's it. Maybe you were a Christian before and you fell out. Maybe you never had it, but you just don't have belief in a God. 2, do you act according to what you believe there is no God in, or what you don't believe in, lack belief in God? This is like the worst worded question. That in before the or, after the parens, like that is just really terrible. I think it's just terribly worded in general, but I do act according to what I believe in, but it's not like I base it off, oh, there is no God, so here's how I'm going to live. It is, there is no God, but what do I believe? And I set up lists of values and things that I believe in, things that I think are the correct way to behave, and I base my behavior off of those. It's the fact that there is no God that I build something from there. That's it. But I'm not basing it off of a lack of belief in God. That's just a ridiculous wording of this, I think. Let's go on to question 3. Do you think it is inconsistent for someone who lacks belief in God to work against God's existence by attempting to show that God doesn't exist? I think this is another terribly worded question. Is it inconsistent for someone who lacks belief to work against God's existence? We're not working against God's existence, A. I don't know that it's inconsistent if you have an interest in various philosophical arguments and one of them happens to be whether or not a God exists. Like, you like to consider them. I don't know what's inconsistent. Like, I think all ideas can be on the table. Like, you can consider things that you don't believe in. So I don't know. But so we're not working against God's existence because we don't believe in a God. What we're working against is Christians who are trying to impose their beliefs on our lives. That's where it is. And so one of the things can be to try to show someone that your worldview with a God in it has problems. I think the wording of this question is terrible, and it's just meant to put us on the defensive and to defend why we would want to discuss this at all. But you can discuss anything. Okay, let's go on to number 4. How sure are you that your atheism properly represents reality? Well, it doesn't. It's just a position on a question. Atheism doesn't represent reality, I guess, is what I'm thinking. I don't think a God exists, but atheism itself does not represent reality. 5, how sure are you that your atheism is correct? Is this a different question? I'm actually trying to be charitable about these, but I just feel like that this is like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I'm pretty sure. I've heard lots of Christian arguments. I'm pretty sure that God does not exist. It's just a very weirdly worded question. 6, how would you define what truth is? I hope that there's not some intention of being logical in the progression of these. But anyway, because this is just odd progression of questions, I guess. Truth is what most aligns with what reality shows. There you go. What reality is. Truth and reality, to me, are aligned. 7, why do you believe your atheism is a justifiable position to hold? I don't see any evidence. I mean, some of these could have been grouped better, I think. So this could have been up with the, how sure are you that your atheism properly represents reality? But number 8, are you a materialist or a physicalist or what? It comes off as a little aggressive, like, hey, I'm walking here. Are you a materialist or a physicalist or what? I do think that the material world is all that we can know exists. If there's a supernatural, demonstrate that, please. I don't like to put a label. I don't like to say I'm a materialist because I don't know. It's just strange, but I just don't see any. I don't see it as an identity, I guess, but I don't see anything else besides the material universe. 9, do you affirm or deny that atheism is a worldview? Why or why not? Oh my gosh, this is the whole other list of questions from Slickhead, this do you affirm or deny? It's just such a weird legalistic way to phrase it. Atheism is not a worldview. It is a piece of a worldview. It maybe is a way that you can start off, how are you going to build your worldview? But it itself is not a worldview. It's a component. 10, not all atheists are antagonistic to Christianity, but for those of you who are, why the antagonism? Well, I love this question that as if Christians are just like these meek beings off in a corner, not encroaching on our lives at all. The fact of the matter is there are Christians trying to tell people that their whole existence is wrong, that they're sinful, that they should change who they are, that they should not express aspects of their being, like LGBTQ people. Like right now, trans people have a really hard time just existing. But everybody's trying to roll back all of these gains of the LGBTQ plus community. Also, abortion is an issue, and I just read a story today in the newspaper about a woman whose fetus was not viable, and yet she was denied an abortion in the state of Ohio. So you're actually actively encroaching on people, or at least maybe not you specifically, Matt Slick, but Christians are. And excuse us if we kind of just want to live our lives without you being in our face and trying to impact how we live our lives. There you go. Also, some people feel like they were lied to in the church. There are lots of different personal reasons. Christians are not just sitting in a meek little corner all to themselves. They're actually having an impact on others, and that can upset people, and I think understandably so. 11. If you were at one time a believer in the Christian God, what caused you to deny his existence? Oh yeah, there's an objective question, right? That's totally objective to say deny his existence. I just lack a belief. I was a Christian and I fell out of belief. Things didn't make sense and they kept not making sense, and other stuff stopped making sense until at one point I had to say, I guess I just don't believe in this God. I did not see any reason to come back. No evidence was ever forthcoming. No being came down to call me back. But deny his existence, I just stopped believing. Try to be a little more neutral, please. Number 12. Do you believe the world would be better off without religion? Abso-fucking-lutely. 13. Do you believe the world would be better off without Christianity? Abso-fucking-lutely. Part 2. Yes. 14. Do you believe that faith in a god or gods is a mental disorder? No, I don't think so. I think it's so ingrained in our culture. It can become one. I think definitely some cults, but the general consensus among people who are religious, no. 15. Must God be known through the scientific method? What a wording. Must God be known? I don't know what you're imagining by the scientific method here. Again, try to read these charitably. I'm imagining, though, that we all have lab coats on, and we put God on a slide and look at him under a microscope, or we point a telescope at a star. Oh, there's God. I think of the scientific method as something where we try to corroborate what our ideas are with observations and evidence. We don't just sit in our heads and say, oh, this is what I want to be true. But we can look out in the world and studies and find what we know to be true through some kind of external evidence that can be verified multiple times consistently and so on. It seems, though, that there must be some way to show that God exists if he does, like some external way, not just I feel it in my bones or whatever. So does God impact the world? There must be some way to show that that is or is not true. So it's hard to say, like, oh, the scientific method. There must be some verifiable way to do this, I guess. So yes or no, depending on what you mean by this. Let's just move on. 16. If you answered yes to the previous question, then how do you avoid a category mistake by requiring material evidence for an immaterial God? Well, does he intervene in this universe at all? There must be some way to test for the impact of this deity. But again, I don't know what your understanding of God is exactly, but there must be something besides, like, Matt Slick just asserted it. Because I know Matt Slick is a presup. He just presupposes that God exists. Anyway, let's just move on to the next question. 17. Do we have any purpose as human beings? If you want, you can have a purpose. 18. If we do have a purpose, can you, as an atheist, please explain how that purpose is determined? You give it to yourself if you want one, and you don't need anything else. 19. Where does morality come from? It comes from lots of places. We have evolved with a sense of empathy and a desire for cooperation as well as competition with others, and we build our laws and our rules together. So it comes from us. There's no like morality as a Platonic ideal out there. 20. Are there moral absolutes? Yeah, I don't know if there are moral absolutes. Like, I kind of want to say there are, but I would have to think about this a lot more. I'm much more of morality in context, morality as a situational decision that we make. What is in the best interest of the beings that are impacted by whatever the action is? And you think of something like killing, that isn't a moral absolute because, first we have war. And I think that we would say, like, in war, that's what happens in a war. There can be bad killing in a war, but, there are types that we as humans have decided that's okay. I think euthanasia is fine when the person has chronic pain or a chronic illness and just wants to end it, and they agree, and then have somebody put them to sleep like we put animals down. There are other circumstances like self-defense. So even killing isn't a moral absolute. 21. If there are moral absolutes, could you list a few of them? Like I said, I'm not sure that there are. I think there are some things that it's hard to think of circumstances where that's okay. Like, I think rape is another one. Like, I can't think of a good circumstance for that. There might be some others, but most of the time I don't think that there are that many. Everything is situational. How does this impact people? Let's move on. 22. Do you believe there is such a thing as evil? If so, what is it? Well, I don't think evil is a thing. It is an adjective that describes behavior. It's not a force out in the world. It's not the devil. So, like, what is it? It's an adjective we apply to behaviors that we just think are really, really cruel and cause incredible harm, but it's not a force. Like Hitler, I think, is evil, but it's not like he was possessed by a devil. He and the people around him, the other Nazis, made a series of decisions that caused just an immense amount of suffering and atrocity and horror beyond my even understanding, and I have studied the Holocaust. That's what evil is, but it's an adjective. 23. If you believe that the God of the Old Testament is morally bad, by what standard do you judge that he is bad? Well, one of them I would use your own when you say that God is holy and God is all that is good, and then I could use his own and say, like, God says we should do this and we should do that, but he doesn't behave like that. God himself called himself a jealous God. So by his own accounting, it's like, he's not like the greatest. I can also use my own standard, like my own values, how I think people should behave. And I don't see a problem with that. Like, I have my values. I have what I think are good and bad ways of being in the world. But anyway, I just think it's funny that people ask this question, like, what's standard? Like, how dare you judge God? So as if like to push us back and make us question ourselves. But, I don't think that a God that genocides his creation is like, I think that's morally bad. Like, why don't you teach them? Why don't you try to guide them? There's no evidence that God ever tried to guide those people. A God that also tests one of his most faithful servants, Job, just as like on a dare by the devil. Like, come on. Anyway, we're going to move on. 24, what would it take for you to believe in God? Haven't we been through here already? Anyway, I just have to say this again. A tri-omni God, all good, all powerful, all knowing. There must be something he can come up with that would convince me. Come on. If, Joe Schmo, who just, never had a doubt in his life and goes to church every week, believes in God and like has sufficient evidence, why can't we all? We should all have whatever we need. And it seems like an all-powerful being would know how to do that. All right, 25. What would constitute sufficient evidence for God's existence? Are we just going to keep reiterating this? Like, what would make you believe in God? What would make you believe in God? Come on, like over and over again, the scientific thing and this and that. Anyway, we've already answered this. This is what makes it tedious. You're asking a different way the same question. 26. Must this evidence be rationally based, archaeological, testable in a lab, etc., or what? We've answered this. We've been here. But also, archaeological? Like, we're going to do an archaeological dig and what? You're going to find God's bones? Or like his fortress? Like, what archaeological what? I don't know. I mean, sure, there's archaeological evidence that sites in the Bible existed, but of course they did. Of course they're going to put the Bible in a real world, but archaeological. Testable in a lab, I don't know. I don't, again, we have a tri-omni God. It seems like he could come up with something. Let's go on. 27. Do you think that a society that is run by Christians or atheists would be safer? Why? I don't know that matters. I think that either one, people are going to do bad things. I think people have a tendency to be both good and bad. Sometimes they just run into, like, they're in bad circumstances and they make bad choices. The only difference, I think, is that atheists would actually, especially if they were skeptics, try to look at how do we improve this and be very clear-minded about it, whereas Christians are like, oh, Christians never do anything wrong because we have God. And that is just patently false. 28. Do you believe in free will? Free will being the ability to make choices without coercion. Well, phrased like that, I do have the impression that I have free will. Most of the time, I tend to fall into I think free will is an illusion whenever I get into discussions about free will. But this, I do think that, what is the coercion, I guess? I would need more clarification. Most of the time, though, I think I have the impression I'm making choices, but I don't know that I actually have free will. 29. If you believe in free will, do you see any problem with defending the idea that the physical brain, which is limited and subject to the neurochemical laws of the brain, can still produce free will choices? That's part of the problem with the free will. Like our mind, which I think of as an executive function of the brain, has the impression it's doing these things. And that's why I'm not sure that we actually do have free will. And then, of course, our circumstances also dictate a lot. I'm not a philosopher, so I've done some philosophy, but generally when I get into these topics, that's what I come down on. All right, let's move on. 30. If you affirm evolution and that the universe will continue to expand forever, what is evolution and the expansion of the universe? Why are they together? And forever? Will the universe continue to expand forever? Is that what people say? I don't know if that's what is said. then do you think it is probable that given enough time, brains would evolve to the point of exceeding mere physical limitations and become free of the physical and temporal, and thereby become deity and not be restricted by space and time? If not, why not? I don't know that that's possible. I don't know if I don't know if it's possible to evolve beyond mere physical limitations and become a deity. This sounds like a good sci-fi plot. Somebody should write this, I think. But I don't know that any of this makes any sense. It just sounds like a good basis for a plot. The start of a plot, I should say. 31, the last one. If you answered the previous question in the affirmative, then aren't you saying that it's probable that some sort of God exists? I love it. I love it. Are we in a Star Trek time paradox? Like, if I evolve into the future beyond my physical limitations and, I don't know, become a deity, and then that retroactively suggests that there was a God. Oh my gosh. Somebody needs to write it. Come on, people. All my writers out there, tell me that isn't a good starting place. There we go. I did find the repetition of some of this, like, what would it take for you to believe in God? How about now? I think that that's really tedious, and I think that some of the wording of these was just really incredibly tedious. That's where I come down on these, and they're just more questions than there need to be. I think that Matt Slick thinks that this is being more rigorous, but this is just... To me, there's a lot of blah blah in here that could have been cut down, if somebody had bothered to do that. But what do you think? You probably don't want to put all 31 questions in the comments, but choose one and see what your answer would be on any one that inspires you. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff. If you're on YouTube, you know what to do. Oh, and I have a Buy Me a Coffee if you want to support what I do, and it has no commitment attached. It's more like a tip jar. Thank you for whatever, liking, subscribing, and all of the YouTube stuff. That's what I have for you today. I'll see you the next time. Bye for now.